Alright, what I have here is a 1882 Remington. It's not the 1889, but it's an 1882. It's pretty similar to the 1889. I kept it all original. There's just a few little differences with the 1882 model and the 1889 as the original butt plate. Double exposed hammers. This one's in really pretty, really good shape. Let me show you the forearm here. It's all matching serial numbers. Now, with the 1882 model, the few differences are the hammers, of course. If you compare the 1889, the hammers are just slightly more rounded here and not as high on the hammers. And it doesn't have this little part that comes up, which these were in transition from the percussion days. So slightly before this was made, you had mostly percussions with the caps and black powder, and this was more of when it was made, if you were actually putting a cap on there or a black powder charge, and they kind of kept the same style. But this is double barrel 12 gauge, and this is, I think, is a little bit more prettier than the 1889 because it gives it a little bit more aesthetics for the percussion days. This is pretty much a guard, so that it, like if you had a percussion or black powder, this little lip here would prevent you from getting in your eyes, or little splats of gunpowder or whatever, the charge of it. And also this little added flange on here would be the same thing. Now the 1889 doesn't have this, and of course it doesn't have this here. And then like I said, with the hammers on the 1889, they just go a little bit more rounded here. So to clean this pin, the firing pin, you have to take this screw out right there, and there's one on each side for each firing pin. Soak them in oil if you can't. You don't want to strip these screws at all. You always want to soak these in some oil overnight or for 2 or 3 days before you even attempt to even unscrew these. So, and get the right screwdrivers for these screws. Don't use anything smaller or bigger, because you will strip these screws, and these screws are obsolete. To get these screws are like unbelievable hard to find. So if you want to keep an original, make sure you get the right screwdrivers. Make sure you have a good grip on the screwdriver, a decent screwdriver, and soak these in oil for a little while. So let me go out here and then push this in. Okay, now you can see how straight the barrels are. They made these barrels in Damascus and laminated steel, I believe. This is not Damascus, as you can see. I think this is just the regular steel barrels for being this old of a shotgun. I'm surprised it's not Damascus. There's the other side of the lock. And these are both original hammers with all the original screws. So everything's original on here. Had some nice checkering done. There's really no cracks at all on this wood stock. The only one actually I did find today was right here. Let As you can see right behind the trigger guard, just a little crack starting. I love these old hammer shotguns. I have a few of them, and I wish I had more. I just think they're beautiful, and just if they could talk, and I mean they're over 130 years old, you know, between 120 and 140-year-old hammer shotguns, which you can still shoot today. You know, I don't recommend magnums or anything like that, of course, but if you the miniature shotgun shells, anything that's light duty, very, very short brass, 12 gauge, you could shoot through these with a, you know, not a powerful black powder charge, or you know, I mean a regular smokeless powder charge. But I recommend just either making your own black powder shotgun shells. You could buy a couple brass, old-time brass shells, and then make them yourself. They're not that hard to do with black powder, and you just have to make sure the powder is extremely tight. Black powder doesn't like loose inside of a shell. It likes it compacted, tight, no air gaps, of course. But you can also shoot the what is it called, the Aquilas or something, Aquilas or Aquilas, the short shells, 12 gauge, because this is, I think, 2.5 inches or 2 5/8 long, and you could shoot those, the light loads, and it actually is fun. The only thing is with these double barrel shotguns, they're real heavy, because like I said, this is an 1882 Remington model, and the other difference I wanted to show you, there's no stamping on the lock, so you have no stamping for the name of Remington on the lock for this particular model. Is a catbird. So the only thing that you have on this one, and this one is pretty much worn on the barrel, is you do have the Remington. Well, actually, it's turned around the opposite way. So you have the Remington name and where it was made in New York. But other than that, that's all that's on this barrel, and it is matching numbers. I checked everything. The stock is matching, the trigger guard, the receiver, the forearm, etc. Let me open it up here for you. There we go. So there you can see, right there. The inside of the barrels are pretty decent. I won't take it apart for you right now, but as you can see, it's 13,000 something for the serial number. And then I think they made around 16,000 of the 1882s, and I think they made them up until 1888. And of course then the 1889s came out, and then after that the 94s, and then the 99s. So there you go. It's a pretty neat shotgun. I love them. I love my old hammer guns. I wish I had more, like I said. I would trade some of my other firearms in for these. But this particular one is pretty heavy. I think they're all heavy actually, but to carry this in the field, what a lot of people do is they saw them, you know, for sawed-off shotguns, they'll 18 and a half inch barrels, which is tragic to these. But if you have one that's in pretty bad shape and it's kind of pitted and the barrel's like over pitted, you know, I would saw it off and then just use it as a sawed off for house protection. They make great house protection guns, you know, shotguns, and you might be able to find them once in a while pretty reasonable, but they are going up in value. This one is very scarce. Like I said, it's in the 13,000 range. So technically it wasn't made in 1882. It was probably made around 1886, 87. Since they only made around 16,000 of them. And this is in the 13,000. So there you go. 1882 Remington. Again, it's not the 1889. One day I'll make a video of the 1889, and maybe I'll make them together so that you could see mainly the differences on these. Oops, out of focus, sorry. Just a pretty shotgun. If anybody wants to get into this hobby of collecting them, start now, because one day you're not going to, fairly soon, you're not going to see these around much longer. And like I said, they're getting up there in value. Something like hammer shotguns, you're lucky if you get them anywhere from $300 to $800 now. And the $300 ones are pretty much been used and abused. $500 to $900, you could still get some decent ones. There's Richards, you know, there's a lot of Belgium ones and made in Europe, and sometimes you can find some Colts, which are very, very rare, but they're getting up really high. They're like $900 to $1,200 now for an old Colt. They didn't make those very long, I think for 2 years only on the Colt double barrel hammers. But the Remington, they're the oldest gun company around. They've been around for a long time. And if you see them, pick them up, enjoy them. Hopefully you can pass them down to somebody that's going to enjoy them, because I would love to do that eventually. I hope they just don't go out there and into auction and into a closet and rust and decay and fade away, you know, because these things, they just need to be cleaned once in a while and oiled so they don't rust. A lot of people leave them unattended, and they don't put some oil on them to keep them from rusting, and before you know it, whether they hit water or condensation, they just get ruined, and you're never going to see these again. So hopefully people out there will care about this, because like I said, these are about 130, 140 years old now, and these got to be taken care of to preserve them, so generations in time, you know, 200 years from now, could see these. They're just so interesting, you know. There you go. Remington 1882 double barrel hammered shotgun, 12 gauge.